All right, we're going to go ahead and get started. Well, welcome to the webinar on intelligent automation for patch management, co-hosted by JetPatch and Cambridge Technology. The presenters today will be Adil Basha, who's our cloud operations architect. I'm Zach Wyatt, director of sales. The agenda today, we're going to give an overview of patch management, the challenges, the issues, the implementation roadmap. We'll try to cover various deployment architectures and case studies, and we're trying to get this in around 40 minutes, concluding with the Q&A section. So if you look at the GoToMeeting on the right hand on the bar there, you'll see a question box. So as we go through the webinar and the slides, feel free to punch in any questions you have, and then at the Q&A part of today's event, we'll cover all those. So as we go through, jot down all your questions, and then we'll address them in the Q&A section. But before we get started, I wanted to kind of give a quick overview of Cambridge Technology. We're a 20-year-old firm helping companies create, modify, and implement their IT strategies. We are publicly listed out of the Mumbai Stock Exchange with over 500 employees based in North America, Europe, and Asia. We have offices here in the US in Atlanta, Boston, Kansas, and Louisville. We're a CMMI Level 5 certified company, and we also hold the ISO 27001 and ISO 2000 certifications. The major niches that we're in are in application development, BI, data warehousing and big data, machine learning, IoT and AI, cloud strategy and migration and management, and then infrastructure managed services. We've been in the cloud business for the last decade. We started way back with Amazon Web Services back in 2009. Since then, we've extended our capabilities to all the primary cloud providers, and we've managed millions of hours of managed services, including application systems with networks to medium and very large workloads. As far as AWS, we're an advanced AWS consulting partner, and we have the big data, Oracle, and DevOps competencies, and then multiple programs, including managed services and the well-architected competency. As you can see, we're pretty software agnostic. Our priority is finding the best solution. The key differentiator for us is our partner relationships. In today's webinar, we want to introduce JetPatch. We've been using JetPatch for the past several years on patch management for cloud and on-premise workloads. So I'm going to kind of give a brief overview, of JetPatch and patching in general. So overall, I mean, patching on a small scale is pretty easy, but as environments get more complex, patching becomes more and more complicated. And typically when you ask someone about patching, you'll hear, that if you look at the actual patch deployment, taking a patch and deploying on a system, this is something that is pretty easy and straightforward, as long as you just need a single patch, and as long as you don't have to deal with dependencies between different groups or elements within a particular system. It also might be easy also if you don't have any really specific procedure across different departments. But I think all of you guys are very familiar with the fact that when you're doing patches for a company, when it's your responsibility, it's a lot more complex than that. Market insight. So I'd like to start by talking about the insights we have after looking and learning about the market and listening to our customers. If you look at vulnerabilities, the number of vulnerabilities that are identified in each year alone are growing significantly. In the last year alone, we've identified over 16,000 vulnerabilities. And if you're working in a medium to large company, the chances of you experience a breach in the next 2 years is almost 30%, which is pretty significant. The cost associated with these breaches, for example, is around $8 million. And another very interesting data point that we've kind of found is the mean time to identify a vulnerability is almost 200 days. And in the meantime, to contain it is almost 70. And the last thing that's pretty interesting is the reason for having the vulnerabilities, the patch. The patch is taking so much time, attention, costs. related to two different things, and one of them is really, is government regulation, which we'll touch on in some upcoming slides. So, the typical, patching challenges. So, what we're hearing from our customers is when we're talking about these challenges, we hear from a couple different groups. So from IT operations, we hear about the fact that if you need to patch a complex hybrid environment, it's very hard. It's very hard because the number of endpoints is growing. It's hard because the number of applications and tools are growing, and because the number of vulnerabilities are so high, the vendors are releasing patches at a rate that's kind of too difficult to keep up. And then when you kind of compound that with government regulation, for like FedRAMP, for example, here in the US or other regulations around the globe that force you to do patches, you start to get a lot of load. And then if you talk to folks that are, that deal with patch deployment, the challenges are the processes. These processes involve a lot of manual work. It's a lengthy process, and it ties up a lot of resources to do all that. And then another challenge is, medium large companies have different teams working on patches, and these teams are responsible for different environments. And typically they're using different tools and different processes. So it's hard to keep track of all that. So if you're managing the organization, it's hard for you to track everything. It's hard to follow. And then if on top of that, you're the person responsible for all the compliance, having the reports, looking at reports, getting reports, it's all very lengthy. And for a lot of the time, it's not real-time reporting. So, there's a couple the three principles of patching. The main conclusion we've had, looking at patching is there are three areas that are actually the real challenge when you're talking about patching. The first is that vulnerability scanning and patch remediation are two different areas, usually covered by two different products, and usually the security team is using a vulnerability scanning tool, and then the IT operations is getting that report, which they need to remediate. This separation consumes a lot of resources, wastes a lot of time. And then the second principle is that most of the security breaches, both in a direct and indirect way, are related not to really the deployment itself, but the actual patch process. So if you really want to address the patch challenge, you have to deal with the process itself in an automated way. And the third conclusion we've experienced is that patching is just not patch deployment. It's a sequence of actions that you need before the patch and then after the patch itself, which I'm sure all you guys can relate with. And then if you want to resolve it, you need to automate the entire workflow. So it's not really a matter of the different solution or the service you might choose or adopt, but it's really does that solution or service really address all these three principles. So I dare to say that if you're here, you're most probably sure one or more of below. Either you need to have an automation initiative, or you're working on one, you're implementing or automating a vulnerability and patch remediation process, or trying to target to improve patching SLA, or even to get a better SLA for patch deployment. You're trying to increase security, which I know is a big concern. Reducing the risk of exposure by increasing the patch efficiency, or some of you might be responsible for compliance and regulation. So you need to be able to assure that your company is in compliance and are following all the regulations if you're being asked. And then, if you're in charge of the budget, trying to reduce the IT costs related to patch management. And then the next two slides, we're going to kind of go into that in a little bit more detail. So let's start with the conversation about the cost of doing nothing or not doing enough. Usually you'll see risks in two areas. The business side of the business risk of data breaches, you're either going to get fines by the government, you have a legal risk. But as you can kind of see with the companies that we've listed on the right hand of this slide, your reputation comes into in a big way, which could indirectly or even directly, be an opportunity to lose, a lot of business, at least in the short term. And being, a trusted, especially if you look at a company like Equifax, who is, has a lot of data around a lot of different people, that other organizations are going to as a trusted site, it becomes a real big issue if you're not really engaging in patch management. But remember, again, through this couple slides beforehand, it's a 30% likelihood, that a company will kind of experience a breach in the next 2 years. And it's important to, look at some of this stuff to reduce costs with using a lot of different tools that are doing similar tasks and, looking for one process. So clearly, we got to do something. I mean, so if you want to look at how we calculate manual patching costs, usually you'll identify the number of hours you spend on a patching cycle, the number of patching cycles per year. Then you need to add into the zero-lay patches that unfortunately we experience from time to time, and IT labor and the fixed costs related to all of that. So the numbers you see here, are from real customers that we've worked with, that gives you kind of an average of kind of what we're seeing. And then, so usually when we're looking at different customers with different patching processes, what you see here is the end result. So you want to have one process that is relevant for the entire environment to different operating systems. This process must be governed, monitored, and tracked. If you're a medium or large enterprise, you typically start from having between 3 to different processes and three or so different tools that are used by different teams, and all those situations are very hard to follow. So the fact that you can reduce this to one process and one tool to improve your SLAs, get clear visibility, reduce the time to remediate, which increases security, which also saves time and reduces that allow you to focus on, focus on your business directly. So the next half of this webinar and the kind of the meat of it is we'll hand off to Adil, and he will talk through some different deployment architectures around JetPatch. Adil, take it away.
Thank you, Zach. Yes, thank you, Zach. Hello, everyone. My name is Adil Basha, and I work as a solution architect. So one of my key roles here is to design solutions for our customers, be it on-prem, public cloud, or hybrid environment. So in the next slide. So the 3 basic principles which Zach was talking initially are basically integration, clear visibility, and process governance. Now, and everyone wants this to be automated through any process. Now, JetPatch is a solution where you have the integration, the clear visibility, and process governance automated and visible. So if you look at the screen here you can see for the vulnerabilities, you can see in a single page, you can see what are the patch status and what are the compliance of your servers. And since we also have an integration with a third-party Nexpose, we also show what are the compliance based on the Nexpose. So and based on this, you can create a remediation plan to again patch these systems. So in the next, and then now the second part of the 3 principles is clear visibility. Here, a JetPatch gives you a clear picture of your environment, of how many servers are there, how many are compliant with your baseline or with the Nexpose report, and how many are still pending, and how many servers have failed to do a compliance in a single page. In the next page, here, the most important thing of automating the principle is the process governance. So in a single page, you can have the different process. Once you create a remediation plan, we have the capability of integrating this with your ITSM tool. So once you create a remediation plan, since we have the integration with ITSM tool, it goes and triggers and ticket with your ITSM tool. Then once the required authorities approves the ticket, it moves from pending to in progress, and based on the maintenance plan that you have defined, because JetPatch also talks to your ITSM tool and take all those maintenance plan and goes into execution depending upon the time or the maintenance. Once it is completed, it will show you what are the compliance report in a single page. So these are the three principles. And apart from that, you also have the automation of workflow, in which you can specify what are the set of tasks that you would do before patching your environment or after patching your environment. Even this can be automated using JetPatch. So in the next slide, here I would like to talk about one of the case study that we did for one of the customer who is on government FedRAMP. So this customer had an hybrid environment and which had different tools to manage different operating systems, and it had wasted weeks of efforts together to perform these activities. And since these are different tools and different operating systems, different teams were involved, and there was a kind of SLA breach for this customer. So when JetPatch was introduced to this customer, he was able to do a clear visibility. Then he was able to consolidate all the patches and vulnerabilities in a single page, and he was able to create a remediation plan and and along with the workflow. And he was able to, since it has integration with the maintenance and ITSM tool, he was able to capture those ITSM rules from ServiceNow or Jira, and he was able to generate the compliance report. And since the JetPatch has the capability to integrate with Rapid7 Expose, he was able to see whether he has met his baseline security advisor. So this was with respect to the case study. In the next page, so here I'm going to talk about the high-level architecture of how a JetPatch is designed. Basically, it's a three-tier architecture wherein we have Nginx, which is serving as web application. For web application, we have Apache Tomcat for application server, and we use PostgreSQL for RDBMS. And in order to have this, from operating standpoint, we use CentOS, or it can be an Red Hat Linux. So it's basically a complete open source. In order to access this JetPatch console, it can be via web or it can be using API clients. So JetPatch is basically using an agent to be pushed to the endpoints. Here we call it as connector. And once these connectors are pushed, you can see all the servers listed in JetPatch console. So in order to discover the set of inventory of your environment, we support different inventory sources. like VMware, in which we take the read-only user. You can add your read-only user of vCenter and embed it to it. For AWS, you can give us an access key and the secret key of with a policy read-only access. We also do inventory discovery using Active Directory and WSUS, and we also support inventory discovery of Azure as well. Since this is a patch management tool, so we support different patch sources. For Windows, we support WSUS, and for Red Hat, we support RHL. For CentOS, we support the patch sources of CentOS for Oracle and Linux. And since we also have the capability to integrate with for vulnerability, we can also take Nexpose as a source. Now, apart from that, we also support an agent management system wherein you can push the agents using the JetPatch console. For example, if you have a Splunk agent to be pushed to 10 servers, you can use a Jet agent platform to be pushed to those endpoints. Then, as I spoke about the ITSM tool before, we have integration with Jira and ServiceNow, wherein once it is integrated, you can import all your workflows of your Jira and ServiceNow to JetPatch, and all the maintenance plan will be imported automatically to the JetPatch console. And if you want to capture the events that has happened, JetPatch gives you a capability to capture the events from the syslogs and alerting from the verilog messages, and you can push it to your required email IDs. In the next slide, now here I would like to give you an image architectural diagram of how JetPatch looks like in a public cloud. So the main idea to show here is that JetPatch supports high availability. Here we have a JetPatch application servers running in 2 different availability zones, and the RDBMS as well on 2 availability zones with master and slave configured. And JetPatch application is is talking to a load balancer, and through this load balancer, you can access the JetPatch console and do a remediation plan or patch management. You can also integrate from this to any hybrid. For example, here you can see, even though we have hosted our JetPatch in AWS public cloud, it can do an integration with on-premise to give you an hybrid solution. In the next slide, here, this is an architectural diagram for on-premise. So if you want to build an on-premise environment, we provide an OVA file wherein you can import in your vCenter and create a VMware. And the main architectural diagram here, it shows how the traffic flows. So here, whatever depiction you are seeing with the color blue, it is to push the agents. So that is the connector. So connectors can be pushed via SMB2 or SSH. And when the endpoints need to talk to JetPatch to fetch those patches, it has on 443. Now, JetPatch has the capability to integrate with your domain controller. So you don't have to create your own IDs individually. You can have your domain controller integrated, and so that all can be listed here. And it also has the capability to configure with the satellite server or a repo server for Linux patch management, or if you have ingress network traffic for your endpoints, it can also fetch the repository from the public repositories. And the same for WSUS. So JetPatch looks for WSUS for getting the packages or the patches for Windows. And it also, as I said previously, it also has integration with ServiceNow so that it maintains the policies or the workflow. In the next slide, here I would like to talk about beyond patching. So as I said initially, we have agent management as well, wherein you can push your agents to your n number of servers automatically. So you can select your agent what you want, or you can give us an RPM or a MSI file. We convert it on to a WAV file and import it, and using the discovery source, wherein you can we have a capability of creating a smart tags. Smart tags can be created for depending upon the environment or the operating system or the IP range. So once you create a smart groups, what happens is whenever you add a new server or an instance or a VM to your respective console, it automatically, the smart group automatically detects, okay, this server is to this smart group, and this smart groups have a set of agents, and it will automatically push the agents that are not there to a newly added server. So this is kind of auto discovery. And smart group has helped a lot of our customers to say zero touch servers in order to push the agents. So in the next slide, so I just want to recap what we spoke. We spoke about the insights of patching, then we spoke about the principles of patching, that is integration, visibility, and process governance. Then we spoke about how much a risk is involved when you are not patching, then different patching architectures, and beyond patching, that is our Jet agent. In the next slide, so here, if since we have concluded the webinar, we will send you a copy of the recording to all the participants, and we have a next webinar on migrate virtual machines from VMware to Oracle virtualization business intelligence for everyone. That is tomorrow. If you want, you can register. Thank you. And if you have any questions, please type in there.
All right, so Al, one question that we have, so is it only patch compliance or also config baseline compliance?
So it configs the baseline config as well. So you would have taken a set of baseline for your next pose, it does that as well.
All right. And does JetPatch self-patch its own components?
Yes, you can add the JetPatch itself as an endpoint, and it will patch as well.
All right. And then what if you don't have an ITSM like ServiceNow to use for maintenance plans and workflows? Does JetPatch have something that can be set up within the tool to create these?
Yes, so JetPatch gives you two options. One is with integration, and apart from that, if you don't have an ITSM tool, it also gives you an capability to create your own maintenance windows and add those or attach those maintenance windows to set of computers. You don't have to be explicitly using an ITSM. So we support both.
Okay, and then are you able to limit the packages, RPMs that a server could see through JetPatch?
Yes. So the most critical thing on JetPatch is the server or the endpoint, be it Linux or Windows, it will only show the patches for that particular endpoint that are the patches that are required. It will ignore the others. So it will show, okay, these are the X number of patches that are required on these servers. So you have the capability to limit as well. Yes.
All right, and then is it only platform or also application patching?
So currently we are only platform. In terms of application, as I said, we can help to using our Jet Agent capability. You can upgrade your agents applications like Splunk, Zabbix. I'm just naming few, and Adobe. If you want to upgrade, you can do that as well. Like.
All right, does JetPatch let you create patching workflows? For example, patch this
Yes.
server or group of servers, then patch this server or group of servers.
Yes, so JetPatch has a capability to create computer groups, and you can create a workflow that is pre-patch and the post-patch. So in this, you can have your set of tasks attached to those pre and post tasks. So in that, you can also do a sequence of the endpoints that you need to patch. So yes, we have the capability.
All right, do we have any other questions? All right, kind of going once, going twice. Well, if you would like any additional information or a proof of concept, you can just shoot us an email at sales@ctepl.com. And then you will be emailed a copy of this webinar, and feel free to reach out anytime. Thank you guys so much for joining.